A mother's plea in the dusty streets of the Old West sets the stage for a choice that will change everything. But when a cowboy steps in, his response goes beyond anything she could have imagined. Thank you so much for watching and for all your comments. Let me know at the end if you like the story and where you're watching from and why you're following this. Sarah Miller clutched her daughter Emma tightly against her chest as the stagecoach rumbled to a stop in the dusty main street of Silver Creek. The year was 1878, and the young widow had traveled for 6 days from Chicago to this remote Wyoming settlement, her last hope after losing everything back east. "Final stop, Silver Creek," the driver called out, his voice gruff from years of shouting over the pounding of hooves. Sarah stepped down onto the dirt road, her boots stirring up small clouds of dust. Emma, just 7 years old with golden curls framing her small face, peered around curiously at the unfamiliar town. "Is this where Uncle Thomas lives, Mama?" Emma asked, her blue eyes wide with exhaustion and curiosity. Sarah's throat tightened. "Yes, sweetheart, this is where we start fresh." She didn't have the heart to tell Emma that her brother Thomas hadn't responded to any of her letters. She was counting on his kindness, arriving unannounced after her husband's gambling debts had cost them their home in Chicago. The main street stretched before them, lined with weathered wooden buildings, a general store, saloon, and what appeared to be a small hotel. Men in dusty clothes and wide-brimmed hats moved purposefully along the boardwalks, while a few women in practical dresses carried baskets or led children by the hand. "Mrs. Miller?" A thin man with spectacles approached. "I'm Wilbur Hayes, the town clerk. I was told to expect you." Sarah's brow furrowed. "You were, but I wasn't certain." "About your brother?" Hayes shifted uncomfortably. "That's why I'm here, ma'am. I'm afraid I have difficult news." Sarah felt the world tilt beneath her feet. She set down her valise and tightened her grip on Emma's small hand. "Thomas passed 3 months ago. Fever took him quick," Hayes said, removing his hat. "I'm mighty sorry to be the one telling you this." Emma looked up at her mother, sensing her distress. "Mama?" Sarah forced herself to remain upright, though she felt as if she might collapse. "I see. And his property?" "Sold to cover debts, ma'am," Hayes replied, looking genuinely apologetic. "Mining venture went bad." In that moment, Sarah realized they truly had nothing. No family, no money beyond the few dollars in her purse, and no place to stay. She'd gambled everything on this journey west. "Thank you for telling me, Mr. Hayes," she managed, her voice steadier than she felt. "Is there a boarding house where my daughter and I might stay while I figure things out?" Before Hayes could answer, a commotion erupted from the saloon across the street. A man came flying through the swinging doors, landing hard in the dirt. Following him was a tall figure silhouetted in the doorway, broad-shouldered, with a Stetson pulled low over his eyes. "Next time you cheat at my table, Rollins, you won't get off so easy," the man called out, his voice deep and controlled despite the obvious threat. The fallen man scrambled to his feet, spitting blood into the dust. "You'll regret this, Sullivan." The tall man, Sullivan, merely adjusted his hat and turned back into the saloon without another word. "That's Jackson Sullivan," Hayes explained in a low voice. "Owns the Double S Ranch outside town. Not a man to cross, but fair in his dealings." Sarah barely registered Hayes's words. Her mind was racing, calculating how long their meager savings would last. Perhaps 2 weeks at most. "Mr. Hayes, are there any positions available in town? I can cook, clean, sew." "Times are hard, Mrs. Miller," Hayes interrupted gently. "Mining's dried up some. Folks are leaving, not hiring." Emma tugged at Sarah's skirt. "I'm hungry, Mama." Sarah knelt down, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's face. "We'll get something to eat soon, darling." She looked back at Hayes. "The hotel, would they be hiring?" "Mrs. Peterson might need help with laundry. Can't promise much pay, though." It was a start. Sarah nodded, gathering her courage along with her small bag. "Thank you. We'll try there first." As they walked toward the hotel, Sarah felt the weight of uncertainty pressing down on her shoulders. She'd come west seeking salvation, only to find more hardship. But looking at Emma's trusting face, she knew she couldn't give in to despair. Somehow, she would find a way to build a life here for her daughter, no matter what it took. "Everything will be all right," she whispered, more to herself than to Emma, as they approached the weathered door of the Silver Creek Hotel. Behind them, the sun began its descent toward the distant mountains, casting long shadows across their path. 2 weeks passed in a blur of exhaustion for Sarah. Mrs. Peterson had indeed hired her at the hotel, but the work was backbreaking. From dawn until dusk, Sarah scrubbed sheets, towels, and clothing until her hands were raw and bleeding. The pay was barely enough for a small room and simple meals for herself and Emma. Each night, she collapsed onto their narrow bed, holding Emma close as she whispered stories of a better future. During the day, Emma sat quietly in the laundry room corner, drawing with small pieces of charcoal on scraps of paper while Sarah worked. The child's somber demeanor broke Sarah's heart. At just 7, Emma had already seen too much hardship. "Mrs. Miller," Mrs. Peterson called sharply one morning, "you're behind on today's washing. The linens for rooms 3 and 4 need to be changed before noon." "Yes, ma'am," Sarah replied, plunging her hands back into the scalding water. She bit back a wince as the hot water seeped into her cracked skin. "And keep that child out of the way. She nearly tripped Mr. Hargrove yesterday." Sarah glanced at Emma, who was trying to make herself smaller in her corner. "Yes, Mrs. Peterson." After the older woman left, Sarah knelt beside her daughter. "Emma, sweetheart, I need you to stay very still today, all right? Perhaps you could draw a picture of that horse we saw yesterday?" Emma nodded solemnly. "I'm sorry, Mama." "You have nothing to be sorry for," Sarah whispered fiercely, kissing her daughter's forehead before returning to her work. By mid-afternoon, Sarah's vision was swimming from exhaustion and hunger. She'd given most of her breakfast to Emma that morning. As she carried a heavy basket of wet linens to the drying yard behind the hotel, her foot caught on an uneven board. She stumbled, the basket flying from her grasp as she fell hard onto the wooden porch. "Mama!" Emma cried, running to her side. Sarah tried to stand but gasped at the sharp pain in her ankle. The linens lay scattered in the dirt, already gathering dust. "What's happened here?" Mrs. Peterson demanded, appearing in the doorway. Her eyes narrowed at the soiled sheets. "Those will need to be washed again." "Really, Mrs. Miller, I expected better." "I'm sorry," Sarah began, struggling to her feet despite the pain. "I'll rewash them immediately." "No need for that," came a deep voice from the street. Sarah turned to see Jackson Sullivan dismounting from his horse. He tied the animal to the hitching post and approached, his tall figure casting a long shadow across the porch. "Seems like an accident to me, Mrs. Peterson," he continued, tipping his hat to the older woman. Mrs. Peterson's demeanor changed instantly. "Mr. Sullivan, what brings you to town today?" "Supply run," he answered shortly, his eyes moving to Sarah. "Your ankle looks bad, ma'am." Sarah straightened, embarrassed by her disheveled appearance. "It's nothing, sir. I need to get back to work." Sullivan raised an eyebrow. "Doc Marshall should take a look at that." "I can't afford," Sarah began before catching herself. "I mean, it's not necessary." Emma peered out from behind her mother's skirts, studying the tall stranger with curious eyes. Sullivan knelt down to Emma's level, his stern expression softening slightly. "Hello there, little lady. What's your name?" "Emma Miller, sir," she replied softly. "Are you a real cowboy?" A ghost of a smile crossed his weathered face. "Something like that." Mrs. Peterson cleared her throat. "Mr. Sullivan, will you be staying at the hotel tonight?" "No, heading back to the ranch once I've finished my business." He stood, addressing Sarah again. "You're new in town?" "Yes, we arrived from Chicago 2 weeks ago," Sarah replied cautiously. Before Sullivan could respond, a commotion erupted from the general store across the street. A man's angry voice carried clearly through the air, followed by the sound of breaking glass. "That's Rollins again," Mrs. Peterson muttered, "causing trouble since the mine laid him off." Sullivan's expression hardened. "Excuse me, ladies." He strode purposefully toward the store, his hand resting near the gun at his hip. As he left, Mrs. Peterson turned to Sarah with a speculative look. "Jackson Sullivan isn't one to notice most folks. Interesting that he stopped to help you." Sarah gathered the fallen sheets, wincing as she put weight on her injured ankle. "It was just a kindness to a stranger, nothing more." "Perhaps," Mrs. Peterson replied doubtfully, "though kindness isn't what Sullivan's known for. Now get those sheets washed again before sundown." Later that evening, as Sarah was preparing Emma for bed, a knock came at their door. When she opened it, she found a small package wrapped in brown paper. "Delivery for you, Mrs. Miller," said the hotel clerk. "From Mr. Sullivan." Puzzled, Sarah unwrapped the package to find a small jar of salve and a note. "For your hands and ankle, J.S." Emma peered over her mother's arm. "From the cowboy?" "Yes," Sarah whispered, surprised by the unexpected kindness. She opened the jar, the medicinal scent filling their small room as she gently applied some to her raw, cracked hands. The relief was immediate. "Why did he give you medicine, Mama?" Emma asked, her eyes wide. Sarah shook her head, equally confused. "I don't know, sweetheart." That night, as Emma slept, Sarah stood by their small window, looking out at the moonlit street. Why would a man like Sullivan, who clearly commanded respect in this town, take notice of her plight? It made no sense, unless he wanted something in return. She'd learned the hard way with her late husband that men's kindnesses often came with expectations. Still, as she finally lay down beside Emma, Sarah couldn't help but feel a small flicker of hope. Perhaps not everyone in Silver Creek would be as indifferent to their struggles as she had feared. With that thought, she drifted into the first peaceful sleep she'd had since arriving in Wyoming. 3 days later, Sarah's situation took a dire turn. As she entered the hotel kitchen to begin her morning duties, Mrs. Peterson was waiting with a stern expression. "I'm afraid I must let you go, Mrs. Miller," she announced without preamble. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. "But why? Have I done something wrong?" "Business is slow," Mrs. Peterson replied, not meeting Sarah's eyes. "Can't afford to keep you on. You'll need to vacate your room by tomorrow morning." Sarah stood frozen, her mind racing. Without this job, they had nowhere to go, no way to survive. "Please, Mrs. Peterson, I can work for less. We need—" "My decision is final," the older woman interrupted. "You'll be paid through today." With trembling hands, Sarah collected her meager earnings, barely enough for a few days' food, let alone new lodgings. Emma was waiting in their room, already dressed in her faded blue dress. "Are we going to work, Mama?" she asked brightly. Sarah forced a smile. "Not today, sweetheart. I thought we might explore the town a bit instead." As they walked down Silver Creek's main street, Sarah's desperation grew with each passing minute. She inquired at every business, the general store, the barber shop, even the saloon, but no one was hiring. By midday, they sat on a bench outside the post office, sharing a small loaf of bread. "Why are you sad, Mama?" Emma asked, her observant eyes missing nothing. Sarah smoothed her daughter's curls. "Just thinking, my love, eat your bread." A wagon rattled past, driven by a woman with gray-streaked hair pulled into a severe bun. She reined in her horses directly in front of them. "You're the Miller widow, aren't you?" the woman called down. Sarah stood, straightening her worn dress. "Yes, ma'am, Sarah Miller. Martha Winters. I run the orphanage outside of town." The woman's eyes traveled to Emma, then back to Sarah. "Heard you're looking for work. Can't pay much, but we need help with the children, room and board included." Hope surged through Sarah. "I'm very interested, Mrs. Winters." "It's not easy work," Martha warned. 16 children, ages 2 to 12. Need someone who can cook, clean, and mind them." "I can do all that," Sarah assured her, desperation lending conviction to her voice. Martha nodded briskly. "Get your things then. I'll wait." Within the hour, Sarah and Emma were bouncing along in Martha's wagon toward the edge of town. The orphanage appeared on the horizon, a large, weathered building with peeling paint and a sagging porch. Sarah's heart sank at the sight, but she kept her expression neutral for Emma's sake. Inside was little better. The rooms were clean but sparse, with worn furniture and thin blankets on the iron beds. The children eyed Sarah and Emma curiously as Martha showed them around. "You'll sleep here," Martha said, indicating a narrow room at the end of the hall. "One bed, but I assume that's sufficient." "Yes, thank you," Sarah replied, setting down their small bag. "Kitchen duties start at 5. Children rise at 6. I'll explain the rest tomorrow." With that, Martha left them to settle in. That night, as Emma slept, Sarah wept silently. The orphanage was a roof over their heads, but she couldn't shake the feeling they had descended another rung on the ladder of misfortune. The next days proved Martha's warning accurate. The work was grueling. Sarah cooked, cleaned, washed, and tended to the children from before dawn until well after dark. Emma was enlisted to help with the younger children, her own childhood disappearing beneath responsibilities no 7-year-old should bear. A week into their stay, Sarah was stirring a large pot of thin stew when she overheard Martha speaking with someone in the front room. "The Miller woman is working out well enough," Martha was saying, "but the daughter is another mouth to feed." "The county only pays for orphans, Martha," a male voice replied. "You know that. That's my point, Harold. If the girl were officially in our care rather than her mother's, we'd receive the stipend." Sarah's blood ran cold. She set down the wooden spoon and moved closer to the door. "What are you suggesting?" Harold asked. "The woman can barely feed herself, let alone the child. It would be a kindness to take the girl officially into the orphanage. The mother could stay on as help, see her daughter daily, but we'd receive the county money. Has she agreed to this arrangement?" "Not yet," Martha replied, "but she has few options. Winter's coming and she has nowhere else to go." Sarah backed away, her heart pounding. They wanted to separate her from Emma, not physically perhaps, but legally, to make her daughter a ward of the county while Sarah worked as little more than a servant. That evening, after the children were asleep, Martha called Sarah into her office. As expected, she proposed exactly what Sarah had overheard. "It would be better for everyone," Martha concluded. "Emma would be officially under the orphanage's protection with guaranteed food and shelter." "And I would still be her mother?" Sarah asked carefully. Martha's expression hardened slightly. "In practice, yes. Legally, she would be a ward of the county." "May I have time to consider?" Sarah asked, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Of course, but not too long. Winter comes early in Wyoming." Back in their small room, Sarah held Emma tightly, her mind racing. Once Emma became a ward of the county, what rights would Sarah retain? Could Martha prevent her from seeing Emma if they disagreed? Could she stop them from leaving if a better opportunity arose? "I won't let them take you," she whispered into Emma's hair. "No matter what." The next morning, Sarah was hanging laundry when she spotted a familiar figure riding toward the orphanage. Jackson Sullivan sat tall in his saddle, leading a second horse laden with burlap sacks. Martha hurried out to greet him. "Mr. Sullivan, what a pleasant surprise." "Brought some supplies," he said gruffly, dismounting. "Flour, beans, sugar. Heard you were running low." "The county's payment is late again," Martha explained. "Your generosity is most appreciated." As they unloaded the supplies, Sullivan's eyes found Sarah across the yard. He nodded once in acknowledgement before returning to his conversation with Martha. Later, as Sarah was collecting the dry laundry, Sullivan approached. "Mrs. Miller," he greeted her, his hat in his hands. "Heard you'd taken a position here." "Mr. Sullivan," she replied cautiously. "Thank you for the salve you sent. It was very helpful." He nodded, looking uncomfortable. "How's your daughter settling in?" "As well as can be expected." Sarah hesitated, then added quietly, "They want to make her a ward of the county. Say it would be better for everyone." Sullivan's expression darkened. "And what do you want?" "To keep my daughter," Sarah replied simply. "To provide for her myself." He was silent for a long moment, studying her face. "The Double S needs a cook. Previous one left last month. Job comes with separate cabin, meals, fair wage." Sarah stared at him in disbelief. "You're offering me a position. Why?" "Good help's hard to find," he replied with a shrug. "You interested or not?" "Yes," Sarah said without hesitation. "When could we start?" "Can send a wagon tomorrow." His eyes met hers briefly. "Pack your things tonight." As Sullivan rode away, Sarah clutched the laundry basket to her chest, hope and wariness battling within her. Was this another situation where she'd be trading one form of desperation for another, or was it the chance she'd been praying for? That night, as she quietly packed their few belongings, Sarah made her decision. Whatever Sullivan's motives, the ranch offered escape from Martha's plans for Emma. Tomorrow, they would leave for the Double S ranch, and whatever awaited them there had to be better than losing her daughter. One legal document at a time. The Double S ranch sprawled across the Wyoming landscape, larger than Sarah had imagined. The main house stood 2 stories tall, with a wide porch wrapping around its weathered exterior. Several outbuildings dotted the property, a bunkhouse, stables, storage sheds, and a small cabin set apart from the rest. "That'll be yours," said Tom Reeves, Sullivan's foreman who had driven them from the orphanage. He pointed to the cabin. "Boss had the men fix it up yesterday." Sarah helped Emma down from the wagon, taking in their new home. The cabin was small but sturdy, with smoke rising from its chimney. Inside, they found a single room divided by a curtain, with a wood stove, table, 2 chairs, and beds already made up with clean linens. "It's like a dollhouse, Mama," Emma exclaimed, running to examine the small shelf of books by one of the beds. "Mr. Sullivan said to get settled," Tom explained. "You'll start in the kitchen tomorrow at 5, main house through the back door." After he left, Sarah sat on one of the beds, overcome with emotion. After weeks of uncertainty, they had a real home, simple but clean and private. Emma climbed into her lap, wiping away the tears Sarah hadn't realized were falling. "Don't cry, Mama. I like it here." Sarah smiled, hugging her daughter close. "I like it too, sweetheart." The next morning, Sarah reported to the main house before dawn. The kitchen was spacious and well-equipped, with a large cast-iron stove, ample workspaces, and a fully stocked pantry. A note on the table outlined expectations: breakfast at 6 for the ranch hands, lunch at noon, dinner at 6 in the evening. Special meals for Sullivan to be delivered to his study. By mid-morning, Sarah had served breakfast to 12 hungry cowboys, who treated her with cautious respect. She was kneading dough for the day's bread when Sullivan appeared in the doorway. "Everything satisfactory?" he asked, watching her work. "Very much so," Sarah replied, her hands continuing their rhythmic motion. "Thank you for this opportunity, Mr. Sullivan." He nodded, seemingly uncomfortable with her gratitude. "Where's your daughter?" "Emma is reading in our cabin. I didn't want to disturb your men's breakfast with a child underfoot." Sullivan frowned slightly. "She's welcome in the house. There's a small room off the kitchen that was once used as a schoolroom. Might suit her while you work." Sarah paused in her kneading, surprised by his consideration. "That's very kind. Just practical," he replied dismissively. "Can't have her alone all day." As the days passed, Sarah and Emma settled into life at the Double S. The work was hard but fair, and for the first time since arriving in Wyoming, Sarah felt secure. Emma spent her days in the old schoolroom, devouring the books Sullivan had sent down from his library, and occasionally helping her mother with simple tasks. The ranch hands were gruff but friendly, especially after tasting Sarah's cooking. Only Sullivan remained distant, taking his meals alone in his study and rarely engaging beyond necessary conversations. 2 weeks after their arrival, a winter storm descended on the ranch. Snow piled high against the cabin, and Sarah kept the stove burning constantly to ward off the bitter cold. One morning, as she fought her way through the snow toward the main house, she spotted Sullivan chopping extra firewood and delivering it to her cabin. "You didn't need to do that," she called over the wind. He looked up, snow dusting his hat and shoulders. "Storm's getting worse. Might be snowed in for days." That evening, after serving dinner to the hands, Sarah prepared a tray for Sullivan as usual. As she approached his study, she heard raised voices from within. "You're making a mistake, Jackson," a man was saying, Rollins, the troublemaker from town. "The mine can be reopened. I just need backing." "The assay reports don't support it," Sullivan replied firmly. "I won't throw good money after bad." "You'd rather spend it taking in strays?" Rollins sneered. "Town's talking about your new cook and her brat." There was a sudden scrape of a chair. "Get out." "Should have known you'd gone soft," Rollins continued. My father would have shown you the door with the toe of his boot." Sullivan interrupted, his voice dangerously quiet. "Which is exactly what I'm doing. Don't come back, Rollins." The study door flew open, and Rollins stormed out, nearly colliding with Sarah. His eyes narrowed when he saw her. "Eavesdropping, Mrs. Miller? Careful. Your position here isn't as secure as you might think." After he pushed past her, Sarah hesitated, uncertain whether to proceed or retreat. Sullivan appeared in the doorway, his expression thunderous until he saw her. "You heard?" he stated rather than asked. "I didn't mean to," she replied, holding out the tray. "I was bringing your dinner." He took the tray, setting it aside. "Rollins is bitter. Lost his stake in the mine when it failed. Blames everyone but himself. He seemed to think you were unwise to hire me," Sarah ventured carefully. Sullivan's mouth quirked in what might have been a suppressed smile. "Rollins thinks a lot of things, most of them wrong." The storm raged for 3 days, confining everyone to the ranch buildings. On the 4th morning, Sarah awoke to find Emma's bed empty. Panicked, she threw on her shawl and rushed outside, where fresh snow glistened under a clear sky. Following small footprints, she hurried toward the main house. Through the kitchen window, she spotted Emma sitting at the table with Sullivan, both bent over what appeared to be a checkerboard. Sarah entered quietly, not wanting to interrupt. Sullivan was explaining a move, his usual gruffness replaced by patient instruction. Emma's face was screwed up in concentration as she considered her options. "Good morning," Sarah said softly. Both looked up, Emma with delight, Sullivan with something like embarrassment. "Mama, Mr. Sullivan is teaching me checkers. He says I'm a natural." "I see that," Sarah replied, smiling at her daughter's enthusiasm. "But you shouldn't have left without telling me." "My fault," Sullivan interjected. "Found her looking at the checkerboard when I came down for coffee. Should have sent her back." "I don't mind," Sarah assured him, moving to the stove. "I'll start breakfast while you finish your game." As winter deepened, a routine developed. Sullivan began taking his meals in the kitchen rather than his study, often lingering afterward to play checkers or read with Emma. Sarah noticed the change in her daughter, the somber wariness gradually replaced by childish enthusiasm. And Sullivan, too, seemed to soften in Emma's presence. One evening, after Emma had gone to bed, Sullivan asked Sarah to remain at the main house. They sat by the fire in his study, an unprecedented invitation that left her curious and slightly nervous. "I received a letter from Martha Winters today," he began, watching her carefully. "She's inquiring about Emma's status." Sarah tensed. What did she want to know? "Whether Emma has been officially placed in my care." He leaned forward. "She seems to think she has some claim on the child. She wanted to make Emma a ward of the county," Sarah explained, her hands twisting in her lap. "That's why we left." Sullivan nodded slowly. "I suspected as much. I've written back explaining that both you and Emma are employed by the Double S, with no county involvement necessary." Relief washed over her. "Thank you." He studied her for a long moment. "Why did you come west, Mrs. Miller?" "Truth now." Sarah sighed, the weight of her journey pressing down on her. "My husband died leaving nothing but debts. We lost everything in Chicago. Thomas, my brother, was my last hope. And when he wasn't here, I had nowhere else to go," she admitted quietly. Sullivan rose, pouring 2 small glasses of whiskey and offering one to her. "To new beginnings, then." As spring approached, the ranch came alive with activity. Calving season kept everyone busy, and Sarah found herself cooking for extra hands brought in to help. Emma, now 8, had blossomed in the ranch environment, following Sullivan around whenever he allowed it, absorbing his lessons about horses and cattle with eager attention. One afternoon, Sarah was hanging laundry when she heard hoofbeats approaching. Looking up, she saw Sullivan and Emma returning from a ride, her daughter perched in front of him on his horse, laughing as he pointed out something in the distance. The sight struck Sarah deeply. In the months they'd been at the Double S, Sullivan had become more than an employer. He'd become a friend to both of them, filling a void in Emma's life that Sarah hadn't fully acknowledged. That evening, after dinner, Sullivan asked Sarah to walk with him. They strolled toward the creek that gave the ranch its name, the setting sun painting the landscape in golden hues. "I've been meaning to speak with you," he began, uncharacteristically hesitant. "About your position here." Sarah's heart sank. Despite everything, was he letting them go? "Is there a problem with my work?" "No," he said quickly. "Nothing like that. It's just—" He stopped walking, turning to face her directly. "I've grown fond of you and Emma. More than fond." Sarah stared at him, uncertain how to respond. "I know I'm not much for words," he continued, his usually confident demeanor replaced by vulnerability. "But I'm asking if you might consider making your stay here permanent. Not as my cook, but as my wife." "Your wife?" Sarah whispered, stunned by the proposal. Sullivan took her hands in his. "I never expected to find a family again after losing mine years ago. But you and Emma, you've brought life back to this place. Back to me." Tears filled Sarah's eyes as the full meaning of his words sank in. "Jackson, You don't need to answer now," he assured her. "I know it's sudden." "It's not that," she replied, finding her voice. "It's just, Emma and I came here with nothing. You gave us work, shelter, safety. I don't want you to feel obligated." "Obligated?" He almost smiled. "Sarah, look at me. I'm a difficult man, set in my ways. The last thing I ever expected was to ask anyone to share my life. This isn't obligation. It's the most selfish thing I've ever done." Sarah laughed through her tears. "Then yes, Yes, I'll marry you. As they walked back toward the ranch house, hand in hand, Sarah thought about the desperate woman who had arrived in Silver Creek months ago, pleading silently for someone to help her child. She could never have imagined that a taciturn cowboy would not only listen, but would offer them both a home, a future, and a love that had grown quietly but steadily through the Wyoming winter. That night, as Sarah tucked Emma into bed, her daughter asked sleepily, "Are we staying at the Double S forever, Mama?" Sarah smoothed back Emma's curls, her heart full. "Yes, sweetheart. This is our home now. With Mr. Sullivan, too?" "With Jackson, too," Sarah confirmed, the name still new on her lips but feeling right. Emma smiled, her eyes drifting closed. Good. He needed a family. Looking out the cabin window at the star-filled Wyoming sky, Sarah silently agreed. They had all needed a family, and against all odds they had found one here on the Double S Ranch, a widow, a child, and a lonely cowboy, bound together by chance, kindness, and the love that had grown between them.